I didn't even know what voice to use.
Fat lady voice.
I was... Have you seen this video? An FHP trooper lines up with a Lamborghini and they race. It is so freaking awesome and so horrible all at the same time. But I want to use this incident to talk about circumstantial evidence and reasonable doubt. Towards the end of the video, I'm going to lay out the facts as I would expect them to come out in this particular trial. And I want you to be the jury. Cast your votes in the comments section below. Now, I don't know if this trooper stepped forward or not, but depending on the degree of cooperation they get from the witness, it could take a little while for them to figure out who the actual trooper is. Once they do, it'll be interesting to see if they charge him. If they do charge him criminally, it'll be interesting to see if he takes a plea or goes to trial. And what about the hardship license? Racing charge in Florida comes with a 12-month mandatory driver's license suspension. Now, you can get a hardship license if you qualify, but you have to apply for it. So let's talk about what the elements are the state's going to have to prove beyond and the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. 1, that there was an acceleration contest. 2, that the trooper was the driver at the time. And 3, it occurred within this county in this state in Florida. I just want to make this clear. This is an accurate but very simplified version of this jury instruction for fun. This case is going to rely heavily on circumstantial evidence. So I think we should take some time to discuss what circumstantial evidence is and how it's different than direct evidence. Let's start with direct evidence. Direct evidence proves something happened or proves something didn't happen. It can be rebutted on either side, but the evidence by itself establishes the event. On the other hand, circumstantial evidence is evidence which tends to support a conclusion, but requires the juror to draw an inference in order to reach that conclusion. It's important for you to understand the difference because circumstantial evidence is often what makes or breaks your case. Let's give some examples. Your breath smells like beer. That would be direct evidence of the consumption of alcohol. But it would be circumstantial evidence to show that you're impaired. Same thing, you have weed in your hand. That is direct evidence of possession of marijuana. But if the weed is found on a table next to your wallet, that's circumstantial evidence that the weed is in your possession. In discussing cases with clients, I see two different extremes regarding circumstantial evidence on a regular basis. The first client looks at all the circumstantial evidence in a light most favorable to themselves. They do this by isolating each piece of circumstantial evidence and suggesting that that evidence by itself doesn't prove anything. And they're right. But what they fail to realize is that circumstantial evidence is like a small puzzle piece. Once you start to build the pieces together, a picture is formed. So you have to look at them how they interconnect. Then you have to look and see what evidence you can exclude based upon legal grounds. The second type of client looks at all the circumstantial evidence in a light most favorable to the prosecution. They see everything as the nail in the coffin that's going to end their case. The truth is that neither of these views are accurate. The state has a burden in a criminal case that's pretty high. They had to prove each element beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. The more puzzle pieces that are missing, the more difficult it is to determine what the puzzle is. Now, in this particular case, the video and the eyewitness are going to be direct evidence of the race. That's how the state will prove that element. But they won't have any direct evidence to prove who was driving the black and tan patrol car at the time. They'll have to rely on circumstantial evidence to prove who the driver was. So now you're on the jury. The state's going to try and prove their case by showing you the circumstantial evidence is substantial enough for you to try and find Trooper Lorenzo guilty of racing. They're going to call the FHP sergeant, and he's going to testify, "Yep, I was Trooper Lorenzo's supervisor that day. He was assigned to work in that area. I didn't directly see him, but I did hear his voice on the radio." Then the state's going to call the communications supervisor. Here's what they're going to say. "I was a communications supervisor that day. I reviewed the dispatch logs, and Trooper Lorenzo was logged in the system before, during, and after that video was made. I heard him talk on the radio, and I know his voice." In this case, we're going to assume that the defense has unwisely elected not to put up a defense. So now you have to vote. Is the evidence before you enough to say that he's guilty beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt? Please vote in the comments below. Guess what? I've got an interlock device to play with. Keep an eye out for that video soon.